Hi Sensei, and those on YouTube, would love you to subscribe, click like, and all that. Today's the big day. My name is Monroe Mann. I'm here for my Taekwondo yellow belt test. So I'm hoping soon we'll be trading in this white one for a more fashionable yellow one. To start with, I'm going to show you the three stances, which are the front, horse, and walking stances. So, place this in here. The front stance is going to be like this, and the weight is basically 50-50 on both feet, maybe a little bit more on the front foot. Okay, see it from this angle. My back foot is not straight. It's not like this, and it's not like this. It's sort of at a 45-degree angle, and you can see that from this side. Okay, the walking stance, which is used in many of the pumses, which are like katas, but in Taekwondo. It's a similar stance, but it's like you're walking. So it's very simple, like this, and there's not a lot of stance, you're not low. So for example, this is used in the kata a lot, just like this. And then you move to the stance like that, from this angle, and then moving forward. And then you don't have to be too deep. You're not down like this. It's just a walking stance. And then third is the horse stance, which is used in some katas, and not really a practical one from what I understand, but you're off to the side like this, and your weight is in this stance. And in many pumses, katas, and karate, they do use this various stance, this type of stance, horse stance. Those are those three. Moving on, the 8 angles of movement. And these are similar to almost all martial arts, not just Taekwondo, but they are similar where you never want to cross. So I don't want to cross like this. I don't want to cross like this, because as soon as there's the cross like this, I'm very unbalanced. As soon as I'm like this, I'm very unbalanced. As soon as I'm like this, I'm very unbalanced. We don't want that. So to go forward, it's always forward, front foot, rear foot, okay? Then inside, and back, this way, going back to the side, directly back, back into the angle, to the side, this way. Again, we don't want to cross, so I don't want to go out this way first. It's going to be the rear leg first. So I'll go through those all, I'll do them all, but now from this angle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That should be actually back foot first. Back foot first. Okay, up this way, and then forward. So it's not always the front foot forward. It's always basically the foot that's closest to the direction that you want to go. So if I want to go to the right, it's going to be this foot first, even though it's the rear. If it's to the left, left foot first. If I'm going that direction diagonally, it's right foot, rear first, because I don't want to cross them. If I'm going this way, it's like that. Those are my 3 of those stances for yellow belt. Next are the hand techniques and blocks. First is the traditional punch, and then the hook. The traditional punch in Taekwondo is typically aiming for the flag on a Taekwondo uniform. So you can see I'm basically covering it up. You can't see it now. And you have the chamber. And they swap, and the other one goes back into chamber. Why do we do this? A, bringing the other arm back, it provides balance to the body as we're going. And the second thing is it provides more power. Boom, 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 more power. From this angle, 1, 2, 3. And from this angle, 1, 2, 3. The hook punch. I've learned the hook punch different ways, where sometimes you're punching this way, sometimes you're punching this way. In Taekwondo, according to Sensei Adam and GMAU, we're always going to be punching the hook with this way. How does that work? You're kind of like a spring, and you are turning a pot. So you basically get the spring ready, and then you're coming out, around, and bringing it back. You're stirring that pot, boom. And when would you use this? You'd use this maybe after you do a cross, and you're like this, you're already in this sprung position, then, boom, you can pull around, hit somebody in their side, hit somebody in their head. So, 1, 2, from this side, 2, from this side, 1, 2, okay, and we switch sides, similar, 1, 2, 1, 2, I go back to this side, 1, 2, and there's one more punch, I believe. Oh no, it's the middle block. So a middle block, just like the punches in Taekwondo where there's always an opposing movement with the other arm, there's always an opposing movement with the other hand when you're doing the block. So here it looks like we have this in the punching position, but this hand is now up here rather than down here. And so the middle block, let's say someone's actually coming punching at me like this, boom, I'm gonna be able to deflect that. And you notice that stopped right here? What we wanna do is go about right here, because you don't wanna just stop and then have the punch still come at you. You wanna deflect it over this way so it goes by. So it would be 1, okay, then put this one out, this goes up, and 2. From this angle, up, 1, out, and up, 2. Same thing from here, up, block, out, up, block. Excellent. I'm supposed to do these from 5 angles, so I'm going to do each one of those that I just did from these 2 diagonal angles as well. So the regular punch, 1, 2, and then from here, 1, 2. Okay. The uppercut, 1, 2, and on this side, 1, 2, and finally that middle block. 1, out, up, 2. From here. Great. Moving on. Next is the different kicks. We have 4 kicks in the yellow level. Front snap, roundhouse, axe, and side from 5 different angles. So I'll do the front snap first. So the front snap, it's like an instep kick like this, except we are kicking with the ball of the foot. So if we're doing it, we can do it from the front, such as like that. We can bring it from the rear, like this. I'll do both from 5 different angles, starting from here. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And you notice I'm keeping my hands up because you don't want your hands to be down, because meanwhile, let's say you miss them or something and then someone comes on with a kick. So I'm keeping my hands up. Next is the roundhouse. The roundhouse, you're going to have to pivot your back foot. So watch when I bring it up into chamber, my foot, ankle turns towards the camera. So bringing it up, and this knee needs to point at your target. So in this case, my target is the camera. You don't want it to be like this. It needs to be pointing, and this foot needs to be pointed. Finally, you don't want to be going down like this. You want to have your hips turned up and be going up and out. This is one of the more difficult kicks for me now because of flexibility, but it's something to give me a challenge as I progress towards black belt. The key also is you want to make sure after you kick that you come back to chamber here and like that. So I will do the roundhouse, both legs, 5 different angles. 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2. Next kick is the axe. And the best way I could use this as a use case is imagine if someone's holding a bag and you think they're about to use that bag as a weapon. If it's right here, you can use your foot like an axe to come up at an angle, go over a little bit, and then chop down like an axe. And you're basically going like this and over. With the other leg, this and over. So I'll show both of those right now. Round robin, 5 different angles. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. You gotta be very careful because it's very easy to slip on that one. When you kick too high and you lean back a little bit, you could, boom, lose your balance. So, gotta be very careful. Next is a side kick. Similar to the roundhouse, but instead of coming up into a chamber like this, you're bringing it up like you're basically like pitching a baseball. So your foot, back foot turns just like in the roundhouse, but you're bringing it up and then you're turning and your heel basically goes up like that to kick and you bring it back in the chamber. So I'll do that from both angles, both sides going around the round robin. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the other way. 1, 2, 3. You notice I'm trying to bring it back in the chamber and to the best of my ability holding my legs up, my arms up. You don't want to be going like that. Great. So those are my 5 kicks. Next are the solo drills. We'll do that right now. And first one, 4 count with each kick. So the first will be the front kick. And we have to do it from 3 different angles. So I'll start this way. The front kick. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Great. Next is the same thing but with roundhouse. A little bit more difficult. 1, 2, 1, 2. This thing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Try it again. It's a little sloppy. 1, 2, 1, 2. For this side. 1, 1, 2. Next is the same thing with the axe kick. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And next, oh, quick water break. The next is the side kick, 5 different angles. So, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1. I'll cut to the self-defense moves. No, excuse me. Second solo drill is roundhouse, then axe. 5 different angles. Roundhouse, axe, roundhouse, axe, roundhouse, axe, roundhouse. Oh, I think we're supposed to turn. We're supposed to turn here. Then roundhouse and axe. Roundhouse, axe, turn, roundhouse, axe, roundhouse, axe, turn, roundhouse, and axe. Axe, I turn, roundhouse, and axe. Next, the final solo drill is roundhouse, cross hook, roundhouse. So, So in this one, the opponent's right here, and I want to kick with the front foot roundhouse. You got to step forward a little bit to open yourself up and allow you to shift your legs. Then roundhouse, cross, hook, or hook. Step to the side and roundhouse. Okay? Do it from this side. So again, opponent's right there. Roundhouse, cross, hook. Try that again. Roundhouse, cross, hook, roundhouse. Roundhouse, cross, hook, step in, roundhouse. switch sides, just for example's sake. Step, roundhouse, cross, hook, step, roundhouse, and then again, step, roundhouse, cross, hook, roundhouse. Okay, those are the 3 solo drills. I'll skip to the self-defense moves that I recorded a moment ago with my partner who had to leave early. So I did that to get that out of the way. So we're going to go through the 4 self-defense moves for the Taekwondo yellow belt test. The first one is the escape from the rear naked choke. Ken is going to, if you can come around this way. So I'll walk through it step by step and then we'll actually go ahead and do it. So if he comes in close to a rear naked choke. So the hallmark of that naked choke is this other arm is coming up to kind of bring around and get a real grip. So what we want to do is immediately try to stop that from happening, okay? And bring this around and try to get that from bringing around, and with your other hand, grab this arm. So we're slowly bringing this down, and then we're going to slowly bring both of these down. Once you can wiggle around, and this could take a while, do that. You're going to step out with this left foot and go behind like this. And now I'm free to, I could try to escape right now, but the problem is maybe he's still got a grip. So we want to maybe do an elbow and then to the groin, and then I just step out and away. So we'll do that again a little bit more fast motion from 3 different angles. So we'll do it from this side. Come around, look up, pull this down. And away. From this side. And we'll attack from this side. You can do the other side if you want. Pull this down, grab from here. To the groin, maybe to the chest. Step behind again and escape and get away. And we'll do one line from the back. Same thing. Great. The second self-defense move is the escape from the rear bear hug. So I'll demonstrate that again slowly, step by step. So he comes in. First thing I want to do is get a base and come down. You notice I'm already, now it's up towards my shoulders. Next is do Superman. Push out, boom. And now his arms are even higher up towards my neck. At this point, I'm going to take one of my hands and put it here so that he can't turn this into that rear naked choke that we just did before. It's a similar type of thing. Step to the side, and elbow, groin, and then out and away. So I'll do that 3 times from 3 different angles. We'll start from here. Okay, from this side. And from the back. Go ahead. Self-defense number 3 is the escape from the side choke. So we'll demonstrate that step by step. Side choke, so if he comes and grabs for a side choke, go ahead. First thing, I don't want him to choke me, so I'm going to put my hand up here to block this. The next thing, it's a little bit of a windmill with the hand. He's going to come around, and this part of the hand is going to go at a 45-degree angle here. He's going to push back, and he's going to let go. As you said, Sensei, not many people can hold on in the face of such pain. So we'll do that 3 different angles. Anyway, yeah. Do the headlock. Side up. Okay, this side. And from the back. That's a good move. It works. Ken is telling us that it works. And the final one is using the front kick to defend against either a roundhouse or a jab or cross, since the leg is going to be longer and following up with a cross. So for example, if he comes at me with a cross, I can immediately front kick and then cross. And if he tries to do a roundhouse kick, same thing, I can kick more quickly and push him back before he gets a chance to finish the roundhouse, and then move in and finish that. We'll come over here. Okay, so go ahead and you can do a punch or a roundhouse. Boom. Okay, again, maybe a roundhouse. Okay, from this side. And from this side. And a punch. And obviously I'm not really pushing hard, don't want to hurt Ken. But those are the main 4 self-defense moves to a white belt. And I'll see you shortly for the Pumse and the kicking drill. Thank you. Yeah. And from this angle. And now the kicking drill, which is 15 roundhouse on each leg in 15 seconds. So gonna give that a try and see how I go. It's been one of the harder things for me to do, but we'll see. Ready, set, go. I know that wasn't 50 seconds. I'm gonna rest for a second, I'll try again. All right, I got my friend Ken here. He came back for a bit, and he's gonna time me and tell me halfway in hopes that maybe I can get 15 on each side in 50 seconds. So make a timer for 50 seconds. Call me when it's 25.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
Go.
15. 1, 2, 3,
25.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
5.
Oh, I think I did it. Sensei, it was very sloppy, but I'm only trying to be a yellow belt. So, we'll see if that makes your cut. And thank you very much. For any of you watching, wondering if doing martial arts online through GMAU is grueling, just look at my sweat and look at how hard I am breathing. These level tests are a lot of work. So please click like, please click subscribe, share a comment, and thank you very much, Sensei. See you soon.
Hey Monroe, how's it going? So I just went over your yellow belt exam. I'm just gonna go down the list and talk about some of the details. All right, so first thing starting off is stances. So on your front stance, I want you to make it a little bit longer this way. So I noticed a few times when you're doing it, it was kind of like here. It's almost like a fighting stance, really. Like the length of it looked like it was a really comfortable stance that you could be in to move around and fight in, right? All right, so with the front stance, it's not actually going to be that super comfortable stance. What I like to think of it is a bracing stance. So I would use this, say I use this stance a lot at the gym, right? So say you get the cables, the cable crossovers, and you want to do flies with the cables, right? I'll get into a nice front stance so that I'm having force exerted backwards on me as I pull the cables forward, and I'm in this strong stance. So it should be something where you should be able to resist force coming in. With that being said, you need to have this back leg completely locked out and straight. You had it in closer, and then you had this bend in that. If you have that bend in the back leg, you're going to be easily pushed backwards. So again, we're locking this out completely. It's not bent slightly, it's completely locked out, and that's going to allow us to wedge our, have our leg wedged into the ground. So as the force is coming into me, it's going down and into the ground, and again, it's at that angle. If it's too close here, then I start to get pushed back over my leg, and I don't have that base. So this is a strong stance for something like that. So I want you to get a little bit deeper and completely lock that back leg out whenever you're doing this, and then make sure that that heel is always on the ground. If it comes up, that knee usually is going to end up bending as well, plus you don't have as much surface area on the ground, and you can fall over. All right, so that is the front stance. Horseback riding stance. On this one, it looked good. The only thing on your horseback riding stance that I want you to try to change, and now this could be a, if you're too tight in certain ways, this might not be comfortable and it might actually hurt you. So give it a shot, see how it feels. If it feels bad on your knees, then don't worry about it too much. What I noticed is that your feet were angled out really wide as you were doing this, which is pretty comfortable on the hip, but I want you to try to have them more pointed forward. Now I don't want them pointed all the way forward like this. As you can see, like for me, this is just wonky feeling. They will be angled out a little bit, but yours were angled more than 45 degrees. If we're at that front orientation, it was angled more than 45 degrees. So I want you to try to close it in, maybe from here, 30 degrees instead of 45 or more. So just try to have that angle of your toes a little bit more inwards. Again, they don't have to be completely forward. That's just it's gonna feel weird, but try not to have it too wide. Walking stance, just put a check mark. You got it. Walking stance is easy. Nothing there. All right, 8 angles of movement, you have that down as well. So with the 8 angles of movement, I want you to just start trying to add combinations of this. So you can pick random things like, say, I want to go forward, then I want to go backwards to the right, and then I want to go left, so I'm back in the same spot. And I can practice moving in these patterns. And then you can just pick a different pattern. Maybe you want to do the same thing, go in the other direction. Here, 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 right? So just pick random things, put them in, and train them as patterns, right? So instead of just forward, backward, forward, left, backward, left, to the left, to the right. Instead of doing that, mix it up, put pieces together, because you're going to be moving in more of a flowing motion, going here, but then you have to go that way, but then you have to go that way. So practice changing the directions quickly by using combinations. I like combinations of 3. You can do as many as you want though. All right, traditional punches. So this popped up a whole bunch. Hand not here, put it here. Sorry, I have neighbors screaming. Alright, but so in our style of Taekwondo, the hand is always going to be on the belt. So you should feel your hip bone through your belt. There are styles of karate and other styles of Taekwondo even that put it up here. This is just, it's going to make for a weaker punch, and then for me it just looks weird, right? But I'll explain why it's going to make for a weaker punch. If we're just looking at this position here, the 2 muscles that are in the most stretched position are the 2 muscles that we use in this punch the most, right? The muscles that we use the most in this punch are going to be our pecs and our triceps, right? Both of which are in just about as stretched of a position as possible for this, which means they're very weak at this moment in time. The more stretched our muscles are, the less force that they can generate. Obviously, they're going to have to go into a not so flexed and then into a contracted position in order to finish that punch, but just starting off, you're going to have a lot weaker. Muscles are going to be the strongest at a most relaxed position, right? So relaxed position isn't going to be fully stretched. It's not going to be fully contracted either. It's going to be right in the middle. That's when we're going to be the strongest. And so we want to have that as our starting position. So if we look here, we have our chest in a relatively neutral position. It's not way back here, so our pecs aren't being pulled and stretched. And same with our triceps. They're not fully bent like this, where the triceps is fully elongated, and they're not contracted like that. So it's going to be right in the middle. So keep that in mind whenever you're doing that. That's going to be one of the reasons why we want to start here instead of starting here. As far as the actual mechanics of it going, that's relatively easy. You got that. You had the twist. I'd like to see it with a little bit more speed. And then you had talked about, and I really like the way that you explain things while you're demonstrating it. It allows me to really see how you're thinking whenever you're thinking about these techniques. So you were talking about traditional punches and why you might be using something like this, using the counterbalance. Another really cool thing about this, these specific traditional punches, you can use it for power generation by grabbing onto somebody's shirt or jacket or whatever they're wearing, or maybe it's even grabbing onto the back of their head, and you have this push-pull motion, right? So obviously if we're actually in a fight and we're not making contact with them, I'm going to start here, my hands are going to be up, but if I'm close enough and I can grab them, I can generate a lot more power by doing it from here, punching here, and I don't have to worry as much about getting hit. Obviously I can still always have to worry about getting hit, but I can pull them into me as I'm hitting them, so it's even more force generation. So, all right, next is going to be the hook. So with your hook, 2 things. One, when you're doing the punch and you're actually going for it, I noticed that your hand was significantly higher than your elbow. So make sure that whenever you're making contact, you have it so that it's going like this. We want the force to go through our hand into our forearm, right? If we go here, we're going to go, force is going to go into our hand, but then it's going to start attacking our elbow. As our elbow continues to go forward, we can have something like this happen, which is not something you want to happen. So you want to have it here whenever you're doing. As far as the punch goes, you can punch like this. You can punch like this. I'm not a big fan of it, which is why I teach it this way. And then if you are going to be punching this way, have a little bit of a curve, right? So you want to bend at the wrist. The reason for this is because as we reach out, because this punch moves in a circular fashion, right? I'm stirring the pot. As I hit, I'll be hitting with more of the flat edge. If I have a completely straight wrist, if I'm reaching out, then I'll be hitting with my knocking knuckles. I can have a straight wrist if they're really close to me and I'm punching at this distance right here. but a lot of the time we're going to be reaching. So think about it. This is the best way to illustrate this. It's kind of a hard one to show. I'll try it this way. All right, so you can see my wrist is straight here, but now I start to bend it as I go further out. So if I was hit in here, I would have a straight wrist, but if I'm hitting out at this distance, I'm going to have this bent wrist. And now because I'm moving in a circular motion, the force is going to be moving in that circular motion as well through my arm. But again, we don't want to have that way, or else that force gets pushed over instead of circling in through the arm. All right, and you did a good job. I was able to, even though you were close like this, I was still able to see that you were popping the hip. You were probably raising the heel up as well and driving through the ground, so keep that up as well. All right, next we've got the middle block. So the middle block, just like I mentioned before, other hand at the belt. All right, I'm not going to talk about that anymore. But the actual block itself, make sure that your knocking knuckles are at the shoulder height, right? So we're not blocking something to the face right now. We're just blocking something to the trunk. Middle blocks are usually going to be used. They can be used for a punch redirection, but most of the time you're going to miss that. You're just going to be too slow. But they can be used a lot for kicks, like such as a roundhouse kick, something like that will be used for a middle block. So we're blocking something to the torso when we're doing a middle block, which is why our knocking knuckles need to be shoulder level so that we can be blocking with our forearm and the trunk, torso area. Okay, next we've got front snap kick. So with this, you have the mechanics down. I want you to relax your arms. I don't want them down here, but I don't want this. So this, I mean, to me, what it looked like was, it looked like you're doing an old school Muay Thai, right? Here, really big. So I want you to bring your elbows in a little bit, and I want you to rest from here, and I want you to move your hands. So I like to call this floating. I want the hands to float as you do your kick. But notice as I do my kicks, my hands don't go below my belt. So I'm not doing this. I want those hands up. They should be able to move. They should move freely. Here, it's going to limit your motion drastically. Your hands are your counterbalances. They need to be moving. They need to be moving freely, but they need to be able to block however. So I can't have them down here because if I have to block something up here, it's not really going to work. So keep your hands alive. Keep them floating as you're going for your kicks. Don't drop them down, but they should always be up. They should always be relaxed. And then try not to have these elbows open wide, especially in Taekwondo when main targets, I mean, the only targets in Taekwondo are the chest and the head, right? There's no other targets. So here we want to protect our chest, especially if we're in Taekwondo sparring. We want to protect our chest. This is going to be the most common, and then be able to block easily. So those elbows need to be in because you know that legs aren't going to be kicked in Taekwondo sparring. They're not, so we don't have to worry about that. But we definitely have to worry about those ribs. So make sure that those elbows are in a little bit more, and then you're kind of floating your hands instead of having them static or tense. All right, next is the no, it's not. Next is the roundhouse kick. Let's not skip that. First thing, and I'm going to start mentioning this a lot more throughout the rest of this feedback, is I want you to work on your flow. So your roundhouse kick right now, what you're doing, it's pretty choppy. You're coming here, boom, you're pausing it, you're kicking it, and then you're bringing it back, which is a really good way to learn the mechanics, but I want you to have a nice flow to it. So I want it to be here. Now, when I say flow, and again, I'm going to say flow, I want to see more flow, I want to see more flow on a lot of things. Flow doesn't mean faster, all right? You can do things slow and have flow. The idea is that there's no choppiness and there's no pauses. So this, that's not flowing. This is flowing. Notice how there's no pauses or stops or anything like that. That's what I want you to achieve. So again, I don't care about speed. The only time I care about speed is for the kicking requirements. Other than that, I don't care about speed. I want to see flow though. So make sure that you are working on just flowing through it. It is a little bit more difficult in the terrain that you're using. With shoes on and on grass, it's going to be a lot more harder, a lot more difficult to have that flow. So I'm just going to keep that in mind as well. But I am looking for flow and I want to see that. And then on your roundhouse kick as well, I want you to use your knee flexion. That motion right here, that hooking flexion motion, I want you to use that to help bring you back. So as you go for that kick, boom, as you're bending it back, use that flexion to help you counter rotate this foot, right? So I rotate, I use it to counter rotate. My body weight's already moving back as I go for that flexion. That's going to help you get those kicking requirements a lot easier. And the last thing is, if you do have a target, so some of the time you are orientated right at your target or right at your camera, so I'm assuming that that was the target, make sure that your foot goes to that or slightly past that target, right? So I'm using my phone right now, so if I wanted to kick a roundhouse kick at it, from my point of view to my foot is to that side of my phone. I'm not going to be kicking to this side of my phone where I'm not going through that target. I want to go slightly through that target. I usually don't want to stop right at the center. I want to go just past it. That means if I was kicking at a head and my kick is moving in this direction here, right, I will stop at this ear. I'm not going to stop at this ear or at the nose. So I'm going to kick all the way through that head. So keep that in mind whenever you are targeting as well. All right, next we have axe kick. Axe kick's relatively simple. The only thing on this one is I want you to make sure that you're pointing your toes as you're doing this. So when you're pointing your toes, or when you're flexing at the ankle, what's happening is that your calf muscle is being elongated. So as it's going up, it's being even more elongated because the hamstrings are pulling on it. So it's going to make it so that your kick usually just isn't going to go up as high. It's usually going to be tense, or you run more of a risk of pulling typically a hamstring. You're probably not going to pull your calf from this, but you're typically going to pull that. Plus, on the way down, you definitely want to make sure that your toes are pointed so that you can reach targets a little bit further. In Taekwondo sparring, if I hit you with my big toe right here on your face, I score, right? And you get more points for kicking to the head. So think of it in that aspect as well. I can score easier. If I'm coming down here, well, I just lost about 3 inches of length that I could have been using to score. So keep that in mind whenever you're doing your axe kick. Side kick. Your side kick looks good. I like that you explained it pretty well. You showed the chambering position. The mechanics were good. You were not. This is the most common thing that I see with a side kick is people doing a side kick and it just it moves in the direction of a roundhouse kick, but it ends like a side kick, so it must be a side kick, right? No. But you did a really good job of making sure that you had that chamber. I want to see a little bit more from the rear leg position where you're going into that chamber and then kicking and coming back instead of just the front leg. Front leg is definitely easier on the side kick and in the terrain that you're in. The main thing that I want you to work on in your side kick, though, for the most part, it looked really good. I want to see, though, you not looking under your shoulder like this when you do the kick. I want to see you looking down your shoulder, right? So if I just lay my arm on my leg, I should be looking down my shoulder or pointing my nose down my shoulder instead of underneath the shoulder like this. So keep that in mind. And that usually helps to correct this issue here. And I'll get a little bit more glute engagement into that kick. All right, next we've got solo drills, or solo drill number 1. So on this, a lot of the time you were skipping. You weren't skipping, but you were changing which kick. So solo drill 1, it's all 4 of the basic kicks. It's going to start off with the rear leg. So this is what you're doing. You're kicking 1 with the rear leg, 2 with the rear leg, except for then you dropped it back into the rear position. So you kicked 3 with the rear leg, dropped it down, and then 1 with the front leg. So you did 3 rear leg kicks and 1 front leg kick. So I want you to make sure that you're practicing both ways. So this one, the first 2 are kicking with the rear leg, dropping down in front. The second 2 are kicking with the front leg, dropping down and back. So it would be front kick, drop down, front kick, drop down. Now that leg kicks again, and back, and back. Now these are another one I really want you to start flowing on, right? So I'm going to demonstrate it. It's going to have flow. It doesn't have to be fast. So I kick 1, 2, drop it down, kick 1, 2, right? So work on that flow, being able to go. It's a little bit more difficult to be changing it from a rear leg kick to a front leg kick and vice versa. So keep that in mind as well, but make sure that you are doing it rear leg, drop in front, rear leg, drop in front, front leg, drop in rear, front leg, drop in rear. All right, and then you were pretty consistent with that, so you did that most of the time on, for just about all of them, then you were showing solo drill 1 on. And then flow. Flow. Solo drill 2, all I have is flow. Just work on that flow. Solo drill 3, definitely flow. So continue working on that flow. This is where I actually really noticed that your roundhouse kicks were going short of the center line as you're doing that, because you did this one facing the front a few times, and they're just off to the side. So I really noticed that here. Also with that first step, I want you to think about it like you're kind of initiating at this point. So maybe you've already started the fight, but something happened where there was a little bit of distance, right? You became double distance again, and the initiation needs to happen. So the first step, it's the front leg roundhouse kick, right? But what's going to happen is I'm going to step forward. So you can step squared, and this all depends on how close your opponent is, right? My opponent is really close to me. I might step offline to kick and not even step forward. If my opponent's a little bit further, then I'll step here, boom, boom, here, right? So keep that in mind. That step it's a distance step usually, or a distance management step. So it could be stepping forward, it could be stepping to the side, it could be stepping backwards to the side if your opponent is initiating with you, right? So keep that in mind. You just have all those options. And then again, flow, I want to see as soon as one lands, you go right into the next. So I'll do it a little bit slower so you can see it. Doesn't have to be fast, but I do want one going right into the next as you're doing that. All right. Self-defense 1. I'm actually really happy that you had a partner to do self-defense with. It makes it a lot easier for me to see anything that really needs improvement. All right, so the escape from the rear naked choke. You did pretty good. The only thing on this is you changed grip. So after they came for the rear naked choke, right? You did a good job. You grabbed it. Again, if we can grab it before it gets to behind the head, always, always, always do that. Don't let them get it if you can. But grab this here, and now don't adjust. So what you did is you took your hand, which was over the outside hand. So I'm imagining this is how they're like on me, right? So here, this outside hand, keep it right where it is. You came in here and you grabbed it from underneath. Grabbing from over is going to be superior. It's going to be a lot easier for you to hold it. If you go here, they're just going to be able to rip their arm off to the side and then go right back for the choke or switch arms that's trying to choke you. So make sure that you do keep it there, and then you just pin it tight to your side. Here, pin it tight to your side. Here, and now you can use this with the step to help you actually pry this off. But a lot of times this is pretty hard. It takes a little bit of actually forcing this down. Most of the time, your lat is going to be a little bit stronger than their bicep, right? Because that's what we're doing here. They're doing that bicep curl, and then we're using our lats to help pull that arm down, and then step back, elbow strike, groin strike, whatever you need to do after that. And then the next thing on this wasn't in the instruction video, so it's just kind of a little extra. It's something I like to call turtlenecking, right? So if I'm going to step up close, you can see the space between my shoulder and my ear. So if I feel like somebody's about to come up and choke me, or they've already started to put one arm in, I'm going to tuck my chin to one side or the other, and I'm going to turtleneck. So I'm going to go here. So the reason I like to do this before I even tuck the chin is, as you can see now, the gap between my ear, right, my ear and my shoulder, very little. I can almost touch my jawbone to it right now, making it very difficult for somebody to get under my neck. I don't want to do this though, where the chin goes straight down. It's going to be pretty easy for anybody that has any sort of training to just drive that under the jaw. It actually opens it up pretty nicely. It's pretty easy to get under. You want to tuck it to one side or the other. If I feel their arms coming down this side, I'm going to usually tighten that side, and then I might switch it to the other side if I feel they start doing this left choke, right choke thing where people just switch. It's pretty common. If people can't get one side, they try the other side. So just feel for that. But I want to keep this up here and preventing from doing that, and that allows me to start doing whatever it is I need to do, whether it's elbow strikes or deconstructing the choke, whatever you need to do. All right, self-defense number 2. This one you did really good. The only thing on this is you are taller than your opponent, right? When you dropped down, dropping the base, your hips were still above his hips. And if your hips are above his hips and he wants to throw you, he can throw you. So keep that in mind. Whenever you're doing this, you need to drop your hips down slightly below their hips. If your hips are above, or even on line, if they're the same height, it's a toss-up, right? They could still get you. You could prevent them from throwing you, one or the other. But if you're lower than them, it's going to be very difficult for them to be able to throw you, because most of the time whenever people go for a throw, they have to get down underneath you, boom, and a lot of people like the kind of suplex or the off to the side where they kind of come up here. But they need to get their waist and their body weight below your center of gravity in order to happen. So you need to drop down just a little bit lower so that your hips are below their hips whenever you're doing this. Everything else you did good. You did a good job of explaining that the hand comes in to stop the choke, so we don't have to worry about that rear naked choke coming, because that's probably what is going to be next anyways. But you did a good job on that one. Self-defense number 3 on this one. This one actually was it's a little off, and I think it's just off because your opponent did something that compromises their ability to even do the headlock to begin with, right? So majority of the time when people do a headlock, it's gonna be from them standing in front of you, right? So they usually have you bent over here, and they're gonna be standing in front of you where their legs are in front of your legs. Most of the time, that's how a headlock is going to be done. Headlocks aren't very good anyways, whether they're behind you or in front of you. They're going to be a little bit better if they're in front of you, but headlocks, just don't do a headlock. There's no point in them. But whenever you're doing it, most of the time they are going to be standing in front of you, which is going to enable the next part of what I'm going to talk about. Whenever somebody is doing this, they're standing in front of you, I want you to step as you swim this arm over. So you're going to be holding onto this arm, right, the one that's around your neck, to prevent it from getting further around your neck and kind of choking you. And then you're going to step and swim. Now when you do this, you're going to be basically reaching down. So I'm imagining right now that my opponent is standing off to this side. If they were standing off to this side, I would step with my other leg. I want the leg that's further away from them being my stepping leg. As I do this, I go downwards and I'm holding onto their shoulder. What that does, or onto their forearm, what that does is it causes their shoulder to go back like this as they're holding onto me. That does a little bit of a shoulder lock. So I'm going to throw them forward with that slight shoulder lock, and then I'm going to use my hips, and because I stepped with the correct leg, I can turn my hips into this. As I reach that over in front of their face, turn the hips, and that'll help you get even more power. And what that causes their body to do is something like this. They go forward, they get thrown backwards. It's very disorientating, and as you know, just that nose technique is also just awful. So all of this put together makes it a really good move for stopping the headlock. All right. Self-defense number 4 on this one, just make sure that you don't step up with your back leg before you do the kick. This one is meant for they're coming at you, they're initiating, so you're going to kick keeping that back leg still. The reason for that is especially if you're kicking. Can you see this? Yeah, you can. So if I'm kicking here with the ball of my foot or the heel, or if I'm doing a push kick sort of motion, I want my base leg behind my hips. If my base leg is underneath my hips and I do any sort of a pushing or even just a front kick right to the center and not like an upward kick like a groin kick, if I kick like that, chances are with their forward momentum, my hips are going to go back behind my base leg and I'm going to fall, or I'm just going to kind of step back like that. I could trip. Either way, it's going to be very weak, right? So when I'm here, now as you can see just in this stance here, my foot is slightly behind my hip. As I raise up, I have a natural tendency to fall forward, which means as I'm making contact, the force that's hitting them, that they're exerting back into me from when I'm kicking them, is going to go into that wedge. Just like I talked about with that forward stance, having that wedge, it's going to be the same concept. As I'm making contact there, it drives through one leg, through the hips, into the other leg, into the ground, instead of through the leg, into the hips, over my leg, and I fall backwards like that. So keep that in mind. Make sure we don't step up before we do our kick. Okay, that was it for self-defenses, so let's move on to Tae Iljong. So, Tae Iljong, hand-up belt. That's all I'm going to say on that one. Longer forward stances. Already mentioned this as well. So I like the fact that you're making the mistakes that I've already talked about, which means when you correct them on the individual level, you should correct them in the form as well. Next is going to be synchronizing your hands and your feet. So what that means, I'm going to go to this part here. After our first low block punch and a forward stance, we have our middle block, right? So as I do this, I want my hands and my feet to end at the same time. So what you're doing is you're going here, here. which is no problem while you're learning it, but I want you to get to the point where everything is synchronized. Right? So work on that synchronization of your hands and your feet. Okay. The next few things, just kind of a few mistakes that you made in the form. It's not actually on the techniques themselves. So after your high blocks, right? So the first high block is with our left hand. I know this looks like my right, but it's my left hand. As the left foot comes up, we high block with our left hand, we kick with our right, and we punch with our right. So you kicked with your right, so you did a good job on that, but then you punched with your left. You had opposite hand and feet at the end. So a way that I like to remember, at least for this form, it changes in other forms, but we have our 3 side sequences, we have our forward sequence, and our back sequence, right? So the first side sequence is our low block, step punch. Hands and feet for the first side sequence, or for the low block portion, are always going to be the same. Same hand and foot, same hand and foot. And then I've got my forward sequence, which is going to be a forward stance. And then I go to my second side sequence, which is middle block. Now the middle blocking, or the second side sequence in this, is always opposite hand and feet. So I have my left hand in front and my right foot in front. Opposite hand and feet. Opposite, opposite, and then my next forward sequence. And now high block is going to be same side. Same side, hand and feet. 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 And then the end, left and left to the right, and then you've got the step punch, right? So here, here, here. All right, so you had that part done. But you just switched which hand punched after your high block. You were ending with the opposite hand and foot. You need to end with the same side hand and foot. So low block, same side hand and foot. Middle block, opposite hand and foot. High block, same side hand and foot. Okay? After your second high block kick, all right, so you did the high block with the right hand, then you did the kick with the left, and then you actually added a step punch, and then you went left and left to the right. So you just added an extra step there. There's not going to be a step after that. So after you do that left leg kick, left hand punch. Wait, is that right? Boom, right, high block, yeah. So left hand, or left leg kick, left hand punch, and then left and left to the front. So don't add an extra step after that kick. And then the last thing is going to be at the very end. So we end with that right foot in front, circle around, and now hands come up, but they don't cross. So you went here, very karate style. Hands come up. I like to do this kind of motion. Fill the lungs. So this is how we're going to do it. Here, hands don't cross. Here. So just think. Fill the lungs. Exhale. So after that turn, left foot comes around. Right here. Not karate style. Alright. And that is it for Tae Iljong. So the last thing is your kicking requirement. So the first time you did the kicking requirement, you're right, you hadn't made it at 50. You were at 53 seconds on your first one. And then the last attempt, so you did it the second time, and I timed you on that one for 44 seconds. So you did make it on that one. All right, so good job on that. I do want to see a few things again. So the way that the corrections work, I'm not sure if you've done it with any of the other courses yet, but all I want to do is I'm going to list off the techniques that I want to see. I want you to practice. Give yourself enough time to feel comfortable, right? If you submit the test tomorrow or your resubmission tomorrow, that wasn't enough time. Right? So give yourself enough time, maybe a week, 2 weeks, however long you need to feel comfortable with all the corrections that I've given you and on the specific techniques so that you can give them back to me. All right, so the techniques that I want to see again, I want to see your front stance. I want to see your traditional punches. I want to see roundhouse kick. I want to see solo drill 1, but I only want to see it for your roundhouse kick and your side kick. So solo drill 1, roundhouse kick, and side kick. I want to see solo drill 3, and then I want to see Tae Iljong again. All right. So I think that was 7 things. Work on the things that I've told you, and then again, whether it's a week, 2 weeks, however long it takes you to really feel comfortable with this, and then flow. Make sure all of these things they should flow relatively natural, right? I'm not looking for speed, but I do want to see that you have a pretty good flow with this, all right? So yeah, all in all, you did a good job, but there's little details that I want hammered out and corrected before you move on. If you have any questions, though, on anything that I've covered today, feel free to send me a message, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. All right? Have a great day, Monroe.
Hi, Sensei. Back again to redo the portions of my Taekwondo yellow belt test that I did not do properly. So first is the front stance, and you explaining. First of all, I didn't realize in the form that part of it's the front stance, and then when you turn to the sides, it's that walking stance. So I think I understand now. And so the front stance is just deeper. So this is that walking stance here, and then the front stance is going to be much deeper in there. And from this angle, and from the front, the other side. My hips are facing forward, my back leg straight. My shoulders are back, my neck is back, like my mom always says. Good posture. Great, so that is the front stance. The traditional punches, you were mentioning that I shouldn't have them chambered up here because it's tightening up the two muscles that I need to actually, it makes it difficult to actually punch if these are all tightened. So they should be down here at the waist level. And so I'll show that from 3 different angles. So instead of it being like this, it should be down there. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Do it from those angles just for good measure. Great, moving on. So you were talking about the roundhouse, and you said while I was doing the 4 steps correctly of the chamber, then the kick, then coming back and stepping down, you said that's only good for practice. What we need to do is we want flow. So I'm going to do the kick going around the faces of the clock, more or less, not the faces of the clock, but the 5 different angles that are required, and I'll try to include some more flow in there. Do that one again. I'm going to do them also from the front because I don't know if you said that you wanted me to do it that way instead. So if it's from the front. Ready? 5, 6, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Next is the solo drill 1 again, with the roundhouse and the side kick. Last time I did rear, 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 rear. It should be rear, rear, front, front. So, from 3 different angles. So 1, 2, 1, 2. One, two, one, two. And the same drill with, you know, I'm gonna do it with 2 more angles because I don't know, maybe I'm supposed to do it with these 2, just so I don't get this kick back again, or at least attempt not to. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2. The same drill around those front angles for side kick. Again, back, back, front, front. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I was trying with that to be more straight line, like you said. First time I think you said I was going like this. And so now I'm trying to do that. But right down the line. Right down the line. Okay. Next is solo drill 3, which is the front roundhouse, cross hook, then roundhouse on the other side. And okay, just gonna try to use that tree. Maybe I will, maybe I'll move the camera. But for the moment, so if I'm in this stance here, my fighting stance, if I want to kick with my right at the target right here, I need to step off to the side a little bit. So step off to the side and open up, and then roundhouse, cross, hook, and then I'm in this position here. If I want to kick with this one, I need to open up this leg like this, and then roundhouse. So, step out, roundhouse, cross, hook, step out, roundhouse. Other side, okay, step out, roundhouse, cross, hook, and roundhouse. Step out, roundhouse, cross, hook, step out, roundhouse. On the other side, step out, roundhouse, cross, hook, step out, roundhouse. Step, oh, no, wrong way. Step out, front roundhouse, cross, hook, roundhouse, back. Whew. Okay, and step out, front roundhouse, cross, hook, the roundhouse. Turn to this side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Switch. 1. Cross. Hook. Come back. I'll do a pull back up just to get here. See maybe this tree. Hope I'm not too far away. But roundhouse, cross, hook. From the other side would be roundhouse, cross, hook. Roundhouse. Okay, and finally, I have to do Tajo Kiljong, the kata. It was very helpful to remind me which leg goes forward each time. So it's the same foot and arm on the first part, opposite arm and foot the second time, and same foot and arm third time. So I'll give this a try, 2 different angles, and hope we'll be done. It's 11 a.m. down here in Miami Beach, and it is already really, really hot. I'm glad I put on some sunblock. All right. And I'm doing this correctly now too, I believe. It's come up, breathe in, and then breathe down and out. But this should be that front stance. There we go. Front stance again. Punch. High block. Kick with the opposite foot. Boom, boom. Then go on the other side. Kick with the opposite foot. Hiya! Okay, and now I'm going to do the same thing from this angle to the left. So a little bit farther back so I can move forward. I can't really see myself in the camera. I'm hoping I'm not going off camera. Those are the requirements that you wanted me to do once again, Sensei Adam. I think I got everything. Front stance, traditional punches, roundhouse, solo drill 1 with roundhouse and side kick, solo drill 3, and the form, Tajik Iljong, once again. So, thank you very much. Looking forward to your feedback. Maybe I need to do some more. Maybe I'm finally a yellow belt. Thank you.
Hey Monroe, how's it going? So, I just went over your resubmission, so I'm just gonna go down the list. So, first thing, front stance. You got it. Yeah, you made the corrections I was looking for. So, this look good. Keep doing it just like that. Traditional punches. Also, it's looking a lot better. You're holding it down here now. Sometimes when you're in your form, though, you're kind of up here. Try to feel for the belt. That's more just a Taekwondo specific thing. It doesn't really matter. Difference between here and here isn't great. It doesn't actually matter. But for Taekwondo, if you do a tournament or something, they're going to be looking for this instead of this. All right. Also, on traditional punches, this is a little bit further in, but I want you to try to work on popping your hip a little bit. So instead of just using our chest and our triceps to get that extension. We want to have a little bit of a pop as I'm doing this, right? So what I'm doing here is if I'm punching with, say, this is my left hand, whatever side, but it's the same side, I'm going to push it forward and then I bring it back. Push the hip forward and back. So what that's doing, what I'm really doing here is I'm actually kind of, especially just in more of a squared stance, or it could be a horse stance, I'm really just kind of squeezing my glutes to get that extension in the leg. So I'm squeezing my glutes and my quads. Right now I'm not using triple extension because my heel is staying on the ground. But I'm just quickly squeezing my glutes and my quads to help get a little bit of a momentum as the power comes from the ground and then through the punch whenever you're doing that. So just think about that. If you're punching with right hand, then you can squeeze your right glute and your right quad and your right glute to help get that. And then you just relax it and it'll bring you right back into that position. Right? So it's just that quick muscle fiber, just boom, and then it comes right back. So if it's a little bit more advanced, something for you to work on. I'm not going to hit you on it right now. Just something to add into your training. Roundhouse kick. So on your roundhouse kick, you've got a bit better flow on this. One thing that I want you to try to do is I want you to start the knee extension portion before your knee gets to that center line or points at your target. So you have better flow, but you still went here, boom, and then that part was a lot more flowy. But I actually want you to start, as this one's coming around, you're starting that extension so that whenever your knee hits that in line with your target, you're already at full extension and being able to come back. Instead of here, point the knee and then go for all that. So I can get that flow in that second half, but want it on the first half as well. So the knee extension is happening as the knee is going into place. So not quite going to be here and then here. It gets all the way extended as I reach my target, and then it comes right back. So work on that as well. You can practice as low if you need to, but it's that extension happens. And I teach it like this to get the mechanics and mostly for the pivot and the white belt level. But after that, boom, here. So that extension's happening as my knee is going into place. Also here you asked about seeing it from the front leg. In the tests, I'm always just going to ask for showing it from the rear leg position unless it is specified. So if you're questioning, should I show this from the front leg or the back leg? The answer is the back leg. You will know if I want to see it from the front leg. Right? Most of the time, I don't ask to see it from the front leg. I usually just incorporate that in some sort of a solo drill so that I see it naturally. But I'm more focused on being able to go through in the entire range of motion, the entire kick. When you do a front leg, you're not quite doing as much, and I want to see the bigger motion, and then the smaller motion usually just gets added into drills. All right, solo drill, roundhouse kick, side kick. So this is looking good. On your side kick, I want you to try to change, and I'm going to go ahead and preface it with this. I do it the way that you're doing it. I did it for so long. I really like that way. It has a disadvantage in sparring. It's not wrong. It's just in Taekwondo sparring, it's not as advantageous. So whenever you're going into the chamber position for the side kick, instead of going here, where you see how my leg is pointed, or my shin bone essentially is angled downwards, I want you to raise it up so that the shin bone is pointed more outwards. The reason for this is because if you're kicking, say, a roundhouse kick at me, and I go into my chamber position, here, you're very likely to end up hitting my shin and hurting yourself. Here, it's going to be a lot easier for you to go around and hit my chest protector or whatever. Here, it's going to be a lot harder, especially because the angle that most people do the roundhouse kicks is not around, but kind of an up and then a turn like this. So when you're here, you're much more protected. It's a lot harder to get around that knee shield, right? It was very, very effective at stopping people from doing a roundhouse kick. They changed the rules a few years ago so that you can't do this and hold the position. Used to, people in Taekwondo sparring would hold this position here, and they would move around, because you can move around. And they'd kick, 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 right? And they would just hold this here because it's very hard to get around, and it's super annoying, and it made for a bad show. So they made it so that you can't do that. I think it's 3 seconds, it might be 5, but I'm pretty sure it's 3, where you can't hold this up for 1, 2, 3, you have to put it back down, or else you're going to get penalized. Okay? But that shows it is effective at doing what I'm talking about, at deterring people from kicking and kind of putting up a knee shield. So I want you to practice that way as you're going through the chambered position here. So see how I'm going up into that instead of here and then shooting it out. Again, I did that for so long that sometimes you will still see me do that, right? If I'm not consciously thinking about it. So just kind of remember that as well. If you do see me doing that, it's just because I've trained it for so long before I was corrected. Yeah. All right. Solo drill number 3. I still want more flow. So from here, kick, boom, boom, kick. Right. So try to have that 1, 2, 3 flow instead of 1, 2, 3. It should look like one combination. It shouldn't look like 4 individual techniques. Right. So if you're going here. That's 4 individual techniques. I want to see that. Boom. Working on just getting that flow. Also, turn your hip more with your left hook. Your right hook's pretty good about turning the hip, raising the heel, but your left one is really arm-centered. I want more here. So this goes back to what I was talking about for the traditional punches. Whenever you're doing your hook, you have that triple extension, so you extend at the glutes, you extend at the quads, which is going to be hip, knee, and ankle. So triple extension at those joints, hip, knee, and ankle, by squeezing the glutes, squeezing the quads, and the calves as you press off of the ground for that strike. Also for your hook, you're still dropping that elbow below that. Make sure that you raise it so that the force, whenever you make contact with something, goes through the knuckles all the way around and into the body, as opposed to in through here, causing something like that to happen. Next we got ticket Iljong. So you did a lot better job of keeping the hand close to the belt. Again, like I had mentioned, some of the time I saw you here. What I like to do is I actually feel I set my belt right on my hip bone, so I can feel my hip bone through my belt every single time. If I'm here, I don't feel my hip bone, I just feel squishy. And then there, it's hard, right? I don't know if you can actually hear that. I can hear the difference. But I feel for my hip bone through the belt, so make sure that you're doing that. Again, doesn't make really much of a difference as far as punching power goes. It's just a Taekwondo, do it this way type thing. You corrected your stand, or you corrected your forward stance. Your walking stance is a little bit long here. You're kind of like this, and I can very clearly tell that your knees are bent, right? A walking stance should be closer, and then your legs should look straight. I'm not locking them out. Like, this is me locking my legs out. This is me in my walking stance with not locked out legs, but straight legs, right? So there's a little bit of a difference. But keep it like this. It's going to be a little bit closer in together with your walking stance. Your walking stance are a little bit far, which causes your legs to bend a little bit. Because this is just weird, right? You don't want to do that with straight legs that far out. So bring it in a little bit, straighten those legs. Again, it's kind of just like you're walking, right? If I walk and I stop, that's my walking stance. So nobody really walks like this with these knees bent. I mean, I don't. That's just kind of weird. So make sure that you come up a little bit, bring your legs in a little bit, and then the legs are basically straight but not locked out. You did a much better job. You didn't mess up any on the actual technique placement, which hand punches. You didn't mess up in any of that. Now you corrected all of that, so that was good. All right. So with your punches, make sure that you're punching. So for you, you have a American flag. Make sure you're punching towards our American flag. So I saw quite often you're punching like this, and you can see right now that my arm is completely horizontal or parallel to the ground. But if you see here, it's not punching for me, the black square. You want to be punching right at the solar plexus, right? So right where the ribs come, that's where you're punching. So if I'm looking at it from the side, I should see a slant. It should be angled downwards as you're doing the punch. Almost every punch is going to be like that. You will have some punches, though, that will be going to the nose. But if you find yourself ever punching where your arm is parallel to the ground, that's going to be incorrect. So it's either going to be here or it's going to be here when you're doing the forms, at least. All right. Next is I'm going to bring it back to the beginning. Junbei. So you got the hands right here, but now you're going a little bit too wide. So it still looks a little karate, I know you're not crossing the arms anymore. You're coming here, and then you're coming out here. So the hand placement for Taekwondo, you're going to be here, right? So what I like to think of is, as you're looking at me, you can see the knot in my belt in between my hands. It's almost like I'm holding my belt here. And then the space away should be about 1 fist length, right? So I don't want my hands here where they're right next to the belt. I want them out just a little bit, about 1 fist away. So it's usually 1 fist in between your two hands, which to me is usually a knot in the belt size, and then 1 fist away from your hips. And now you're gonna have to bend your elbows a little bit most of the time, or else they're just, if they're straight or just completely relaxed, it's kind of like this, right? So you can bend them a little bit to cause it to look, and it looks like from the front, I would be doing that, but it's here, right? So, up, and this is my left leg. I know it looks like my right. Comes down right here. Okay, what we got next? Feel the belt. Okay, I already talked about that. All right, and then this next thing is, it's something that I don't expect you to be able to do right now. So I'm not going to hold this against you. I will hold this against you for the brown, red, and black belt levels. That's when I start holding people against them, but I like to teach them and talk to them about it early on. All right. So this is going to be the concept of acceleration during your techniques. So another way I usually explain it is set up slow, execute fast. So the difference is, whenever I'm doing this, like let's just say this, I'm going to show you the first 6 techniques of Taekwondo, right? So I'm here, I set up slow, I execute fast. I set up slow, and I execute fast. So you can see my setups very clearly, and that just, it's like articulating the form is what it is. So here, so I can turn my hips slightly back. I set up that position, and then I turn. When I'm stepping forward, I'm actually drawing my hip back a little bit as I touch, and my hand raised up. All of that happens, and I execute fast. So I want you working on that. Try to add it in as soon as you can, but it does take time to develop and actually be really good at. So you might get a little frustrated. And again, I'm not going to hold this against you until you get into the advanced levels. But when you get it right, you start to really hear those popping, and it feels really nice. That's when people really start to, from what I've seen, enjoy doing forms. Most people at first are like, why am I doing this? This is dumb. But when you start getting that, you start to be able to get that power generation, and it makes the forms feel a lot better. They look nicer whenever you do it like that. So I want you to start trying to implement that in. But again, don't be so concerned about it that you're afraid to submit a video because you're not doing it properly. It takes time to be able to get. Only in the advanced levels is that going to be holding you back. But practice it now. All right, and that was it for the actual corrections. I do have one thing. I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out. So you refer to me as Sensei Adam. Sensei is a Japanese term. I actually don't do any Japanese martial arts. The closest I would be to doing a Japanese martial art would be the nunchaku, right? But even that was developed in America. The techniques themselves were developed in America. The weapon, most people think was developed in Japan or China. Nobody's actually sure where it came from, but most people think it's that. So that's the reason why some of the time in the GMAU they call me Sensei Adam in like the emails because of that. But in Taekwondo, Sensei is not, it's not going to be the proper term. So if you want to address me by title, I honestly don't really care. You can call me Adam. Doesn't bother me. But I would usually go by Instructor, or the proper term for my belt level as a 4th degree would be Sabanim. Sabanim, right? So that would be the proper Korean term. I never go by that one personally. I usually just go by Instructor. That's what I usually go by. But just, so that you know, Sensei is purely Japanese. It doesn't really encompass all martial arts. Some people get offended by it. I don't overly care, but I'm just going to inform you. All right. Yeah, so I think that's it. Right. Yep. All right. So that's all I've got. You made most of the corrections. Still keep working on that flow, on that roundhouse kick, on the flow for that solo drill. But for the most part, yeah, you're doing a good job. You made the corrections pretty quickly. All right, so congratulations on your yellow belt. And if you have any questions, let me know. Just send me a message, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. All right, have a great day.